Let's face it, convenience is important no matter what eating plan you're on. But if you're eating low carb and you want delicious pizza that you can pull right out of the freezer and heat up in minutes, then that's what I'm going to show you how to do. Welcome to The Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today's recipe is very simple. It is also very delicious. It is also gluten-free and low carb. So there you have it. I love this pizza. And it came about because I was craving pizza and Jeff is doing low carb. I'm trying to do it along with him, but it's a little more difficult given that I test a bunch of recipes. But we wanted pizza, and I thought, I'm going to try to make a pizza crust using almond flour. And I had low expectations, right? Because I really don't like a lot of the low carb substitutes that are used, with almond flour. I really am not a fan. But let me tell you, this crust came out amazing. And the crust is really important on a pizza. The rest of the ingredients you can always do low carb by just making a few, changes. But the pizza crust, it's typically a flour-based pizza. This is crunchy, almost like a cracker, okay? So it is like a thin crust. You're not gonna get a nice doughy, bready type of pizza. But let me tell you, when you're craving pizza, it's amazing and it's easy to make. I'm going to start out with a half of a cup of almond flour, and I'm making just one pizza. You could double this and make 2 pizzas. That's perfectly fine. But if you want to make 3, 4, 5, 6 pizzas, I recommend mixing them up only with doubling the ingredients at a time. The reason being is one of the additions that we add in is xanthan gum. And if it sits too long, it's going to become very hard and difficult to work with. So just do a maximum of a double batch of this. This is a half of a cup, but I also keep out a little bit extra because sometimes you're going to need to add that in. Then we're going to add in our xanthan gum, and it can be added directly to the almond flour, and it is 1.5 teaspoons. What the xanthan gum is going to do is kind of bind it, kind of be like the glue, and I found that the texture was better adding it versus not. So I recommend adding it, but you could give it a try with just the egg and see if that'll work for you. And then we have a half of a teaspoon of fine grind sea salt, or you could use kosher salt, that's fine. If you're gonna use table salt, use about a 1/4 teaspoon because it's finer, so it'll be a little more concentrated. And then we mix that up really well in our bowl. And I like to do this because, if I'm making any kind of pasta, this is how I do it. So I just like to pretend like I'm making something that's, a real pasta and not low carb. Okay, so that's why I do it. Probably not necessary. Dump in 1 egg into the well that I just made into the center there. And then the last ingredient here in our pizza crust is 1 teaspoon of olive oil. All right, that's it. And then I just use the same measuring spoon and just mix it all up here. And this is when you're going to determine whether or not you need a little bit more almond flour. Almost every single time I've tested the recipe, I've needed to add about a tablespoon more. So half of a cup plus a tablespoon is going to be the amount that I put in the recipe. All right, so what we're looking for right here is how sticky is it? It is very sticky. That means we need a little bit more almond flour. So let's add in about a tablespoon. And then mix it up again. Then you'll see it turn into a nice dough. And it really is. It's so nice. This is just amazing to me. All right, there we go. Now it is no longer sticky when I touch it, so it's not sticking to my fingers, and I can take it right out of this bowl. And look at that. We have the dough for our pizza crust. Now, if you're not going to use it right away, you're going to want to wrap it in saran wrap. But don't let it sit too long because, like I said, that xanthan gum is going to continue to work, and we want to get it rolled out before it really starts to harden things up and glue them all together. All right, so now we have to roll out our pizza crust. And to do that, I use 2 pieces of parchment paper. So I'm gonna put one piece down here and just press this down a little bit, and then put the other one on top. And then what I like to do is take whatever pan I'm gonna use, because you don't have to make this round. If you don't have a round, small 8-inch pizza pan, that's fine. If you have like a little tray, you could do that. You could make it rectangle. You could just make it free form. It really doesn't matter, but you will wanna put it on some sort of a tray, and it doesn't have to have holes in it. It'll be perfectly fine. We're gonna par cook this crust. So whatever you have is perfectly fine. And then I just press down with that and get the basic shape here of a circle. Take my rolling pin. Now, one thing that I will tell you is that the parchment really likes to move around. So one little tip is to tuck the parchment underneath of your cutting board. Okay, that way it won't roll as much or slide around. Let's see if that works, right? All right, there we go. And so now we want to roll it out this way. And then you could go from the side and do that, but because I want you guys to be able to see exactly what I'm doing, I'm just gonna move it around this way a little bit. And then if you're not sure if it's the right size, take your little tray, whatever you're gonna bake it on, and just get an idea. And then go out this way. And spread it nice and thin, but most important is to get it even, or as even as you can. Where these little edges start to get really thinned out, don't worry about that. We turn that into the crust, or the pizza bone, as my husband calls it. All right, I think that's good. Let's see, will that fit? Yeah, that'll do pretty well. All right. Now, what you want to do is carefully lift up this parchment. Now, don't discard that parchment paper. If you're going to make another one, you can use it again, but you can also use it if you're going to make these to freeze ahead of time, okay? Then I just kind of center it on there and take it and flip it over. Now, before you crinkle up your parchment, start to release it, because if it gets crinkled, sometimes it'll pull the crust off. Like if you can see it happening right here. And if it's real thin, it will pull off a little bit. But just take your fingers and just go down and loosen it up as much as you can. And if some comes off on your parchment, don't worry about it. Like mine just did, I'm gonna show you what to do if that happens, if you need it to finish making your crust. All right, there we go. Now I've got a little bit on my parchment paper. I'm just gonna grab it. I know that seems funny. It's not even that much right now, so I don't even know if I'll need it. Okay, now what you can do is you can reposition if you want to, but I don't usually worry about that. Where these ends extend, I fold them in and press them in. If they don't, I don't worry about it. And just press and make your little crust. Now this one's not gonna be perfect. It doesn't matter. It's still gonna taste amazing. All right, now I didn't really have that much, but if you have a lot that's stuck to your parchment, you can take it and just sort of fix any spots where there isn't any of the crust. And that's all we need to do. Right now, that looks great. Okay, there, pizza crust. Now, I've already had the oven preheating at 450 degrees. It's been preheating for almost 15 minutes. I recommend preheating at least 10 minutes. You can use a counter style oven, you can use a convection oven, you can use your wall oven or your under your stove oven. Anything is gonna work fine. Temperatures may be a little bit different, just depending on how your oven heats. But start out at about 450. You're gonna wanna par cook this for 5 to 7 minutes. And I will show you what it looks like when it is perfectly par cooked. All right, so the reason why we want to par cook this crust is because A, we want a crunchy pizza crust, and this is nothing like a dough-based regular pizza crust, so we need to get it par cooked. The other reason is it's gonna make it really easy if you want to put your toppings on and then put it in the freezer par cooked. That's the way I like to do it, and then you can just pull them out of the freezer, pop them into your oven or your toaster oven or even your air fryer and have a pizza in just minutes. While I'm talking about air fryers, let me tell you that I did test this recipe in the Ninja Foodi pressure cooker and air crisper using the air frying function. And you could use the baked roast, it would be fine. Except for the par cooking did not work out at all. You can make the pizzas in there, but what I found, because the way the air circulates, is that if you put your pizza crust on the rack and try to like bake it or air fry it in the Ninja Foodi, the air circulates around, pushes the crust up, and you end up with all these little bubbles and it starts to float up, and it didn't work at all. So for this one, use your oven, okay? It's gonna be the best way to do it. All right, so it's almost been 5 minutes and I am already smelling it and I can see it browning up. So we are done. So that is it. It really does not take long at all. Now you wanna be very careful that you don't overdo it at this point, because remember, we still have the second bake to go, which I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna leave this oven going on the same temperature, and I'm just gonna put the time up to give us a little bit of time here. Okay, so now, the next thing that I do, which is really optional, unless you're gonna freeze it, because you're definitely gonna wanna do it this way if you're gonna freeze it. But even if you're gonna make it fresh, I like the crust to be super crunchy. I love that. So what I do is take it right now off of the little pan, okay? That is going to allow us to let it cool a little bit so it really firms up, so it holds our toppings, and then we're gonna get it into the oven directly on the rack, no pan needed, and make our pizza, okay? This is also the way I do it when I'm gonna freeze them, because you don't wanna put the hot pizza crust into the freezer. You wanna let it cool completely. Put cold toppings on it, and then put it in the freezer to freeze. And when you go to freeze it the first time, put it on a tray. So usually I'll just put it right back on the pan and put it into the freezer, freeze it completely, and then pull it out. Then you can take it off the pan, freeze, put them into, a big freezer bag, and you can layer them by just putting that parchment in between. And I'm gonna grab out those other pizzas that I showed you in the very beginning of the video, because I wanna go over the toppings that I put on them. Well, the one's basic, same one we're doing today, but the other one is pretty amazing. I think you're gonna love it. So I'm gonna grab that in just a minute. All right, once the pizza crust has cooled down enough that you can touch it, I mean, it's still warm, but it has really, I'm gonna say solidified up, if you know what I mean. It's not going to break. Okay, I mean, you could break it, but we're not gonna do that. All right, marinara. This is my homemade marinara sauce, which I have the recipe for. It's really quick and easy to make. You can make it on the stovetop or in a blender, and I used swerve instead of the sugar. I used brown sugar swerve instead of the sugar that I call for in the recipe. So it is keto. And we're gonna put on about 1/4 cup. You can use as much or as little sauce as you want. Just remember, the more sauce you put on, the less crunch you're gonna have, even with our almond pizza crust. But usually 1/4 cup, which is what I have here, works perfectly. And now I'm making a really basic pizza, because I have made this so many times, because we're pretty much addicted to it now, that I've used up all my pepperoni, I've used up all my other toppings, and I just had a little bit of cheese to do the video with. So that's all I'm gonna use. Sometimes I will put provolone slices down. Sometimes I will put, ham, pineapple. I know, that's not a pizza, right? I happen to love it. Sometimes caramelized onions, whatever you want. Now, if you're gonna heat this up in an air fryer after the fact, unless you're freezing it first, there's always these little caveats, isn't there? You wanna put your pepperoni on after the cheese melts a little bit. Otherwise, what's gonna happen is your pepperoni is just going to fly away with the fan speed, okay? Now, that does not apply if you're going to freeze it. So you could put your cheese and then your pepperoni on top and freeze it, and the pepperoni will kind of freeze to the cheese, and then that works in the air fryer just fine. All right, what I have here is 2 different kinds of cheeses. Well, actually, it's a cheese blend and then just plain mozzarella. This is an Italian cheese blend, and it's about 1/3 of a cup. You don't have to use it all. You could use less. You could use more. It's really completely up to you. I like a really cheesy pizza, so I use quite a bit of cheese on mine. And believe it or not, okay, because now we're going to use another 1/3 of a cup of mozzarella cheese. But guess what? You'll never be able to eat this entire pizza. I know that seemed like, what are you talking about, Louise? It's only 8 inches. I can devour that. My husband, who can eat a half of a large pizza in one sitting, ate 3/4 of this the other night for dinner and said, I ate too much. I should have never eaten more than just half of it. Jeff and I usually split this, and it's perfect. So keep that in mind, okay? It is so filling, you won't believe it. It's amazing. It's because of all the extra protein in the crust and everything that you don't get in a traditional dough pizza. All right, there we go. Looks amazing. Now, one other thing that I do, I don't know, just because it makes me feel like I'm in a pizzeria. They don't probably even do this, but I do it, is I just sprinkle a little bit of Italian seasoning right on top here. And this doesn't look like a pizzeria pizza, does it? It looks like one of the kids' school pizzas, but I happen to love those too because they were really thin crust and so crunchy and delicious. All right, into the oven we go. Just slide it right onto the rack. We're still at 450. I'm only on the bake setting, so this is not air fry, but you can do air fry. It's not gonna matter, it'll be perfectly fine. And we're gonna go another 5 to 7 minutes until that cheese gets nice and melty and golden brown. Then we'll let it cool and give it a taste. Meanwhile, let me grab those pizzas so I can share with you the really exciting, interesting one that I came up with the other day. All right, so I have 2 pizzas in that bag. I have them separated by parchment paper, and I just leave them in the freezer until I want to heat up one or both of them. The other one is exactly like the one we just made, so no need to go over that one. But this one is pretty amazing. I'm gonna have the details for how to make this on my website, including all the measurements and everything. But let me just go over it real quick because this is a cheesesteak pizza, okay? Super easy to make, unbelievably delicious, and it's like getting your cheesesteak fix without the bread, okay? So what I have here on the bottom, this would be considered a white pizza. Oh, I think our pizza's done already. Let me hurry up. Woo. So this would be considered a white pizza. What I have on the bottom is a cheese sauce that I made with a little bit of xanthan gum, heavy cream, a little bit of American cheese, okay? I happen to love American cheese. You could use whatever cheese you like. And I made this cheese sauce. So that goes on the bottom instead of the marinara sauce. Then I took some roast beef that I had in the refrigerator and a little bit of leftover juices from making burgers, okay? I know you might not have that handy. You might have a little bit of bacon grease or something like that, but you could use it or use a little bit of beef broth or butter or whatever you want. And I sauteed some onions in that, and then I sauteed the roast beef, and then I put that on the pizza, the onions and the roast beef on the pizza, laid 2 pieces of provolone cheese over top, 2 pieces of American cheese because I love cheese, and then a little bit more mozzarella on the top, and there you have it, a cheesesteak pizza. It's so amazing. You can get so creative with this pizza. It's unbelievable. But let me not burn the one I have in the oven because we are already done. It's so fast. Oh my gosh, that's gorgeous. I mean, it's just gorgeous. Now that might be more done than some people like, but I happen to like it this way. All right, then what I do is I just grab my cooling rack, which literally I should not have these up yet because you need to put it like right here, and then just slide it right off. And then you can extend your legs. And then I let it cool for a little bit. But look at that, it's so beautiful. Crunchy, crunchy. It looks just like a pizza. It is a pizza, it's just a low-carb pizza. All right, there we go. So now look at this, okay? You can literally hold it up and just eat it. But I'm not going to do that. All right, let's cut it. You know, funny thing is, I don't have a pizza cutter here. I don't know why. I have one at home, but not here in the studio kitchen. All right, so let's go ahead and cut it. Now, it's been sitting for a little while, so it's not gonna be as ooey gooey cheesy, you know, as it would right out of the oven, but it's still delicious. All right. Look, pizza, low carb style. Oh my goodness. Wow. I literally love this pizza. Now, I will tell you, I did not get it as thin as I normally do. And so this will be perfect for Jeff because he doesn't mind a little thicker crust. I like mine even thinner and crispier than this, but it's still absolutely delicious. And look at that. It's so exciting, isn't it? All right, now, this is the most important part, according to Jeff. Do you have a good pizza bone? Oh yeah.